Right. Good evening and welcome to the Hillingdon Decides, the 2026 Leadership Hustings. My name is Graham Bartram and I'm the chair of the Hillingdon Alliance of Residents Associations, or HARA for short, and I will be acting as moderator during the debate. This event is hosted by HARA, a non-partisan umbrella group made up of the chairs of independent residents associations across all 21 wards of the borough. We are not affiliated with any political party. Our only goal tonight is to provide a platform for an informed electorate. Tonight's event is organised as a non-selective hustings in accordance with the Electoral Commission guidelines. We invited the leadership of all the parties that have fielded enough candidates to possibly win the 27 seats necessary to control the council. The Conservatives, the Greens, Labour, Liberal Democrats and Reform. The Conservatives declined to attend, stating that they prefer to spend this evening engaging directly with residents via door-to-door campaigning rather than participating in a digital forum. While we acknowledge every candidate and every party standing across Hillingdon in this election, including the Hayes Independent Party and various independent candidates, the leadership-focused nature of this specific forum means we have prioritised those parties seeking a borough-wide mandate. I should also mention that the election in Hillingdon West has been postponed following the sad death of candidate Sean Cooling and will now be held on the 18th of June. Before we hear from the candidates, I'd like to explain how the next 2 hours will work and set the ground rules for a civil and hopefully productive debate. Our session is split into two halves. In the first hour, we'll start with a 90-second party introductions, followed by 45 minutes of themed questions that were submitted during registration. Every party has 1 minute to answer each of these questions. At 8 p.m., we'll take a 5-minute comfort break. This is your time to set the agenda for the second half. During the break and throughout this first hour, please use the Q&A button at the bottom of your Zoom window to submit new questions or upvote existing ones by clicking the thumbs up icon. We will take the most popular, most highly upvoted questions and put them to the candidates when we return at 8:05 for our live Q&A. As we proceed, please keep three principles in mind. First, keep it local. These are local elections for Hillingdon Council. We aren't choosing a government in Westminster tonight. We're choosing the people who manage our local services and spaces here in Hillingdon. Please ensure your questions focus on the council's powers. Second, civility is essential. We have a zero tolerance policy for abuse, insults, or discriminatory language. While we aren't pre-moderating the Q&A feed, your name will appear next to your question, and we will immediately remove anything offensive. Candidates, I ask you to critique policies, not characters, and to avoid misinformation. Finally, fairness. To ensure equal time, I will be enforcing the agreed speaking time limits. As moderator, I may intervene or mute microphones to keep us on schedule and ensure everyone is heard. Let's keep the discussions respectful and focused on the issues that matter to our community. And with that, let's begin with our party introductions. I will be asking each party to answer in a pre-created random format. So for the introductions, we will go Labour, Reform, Lib Dems, and Greens. So can I now ask the Labour Party to make their introduction?
Thank you, Graham. It's a pleasure to be here this evening at the Hustings answering residents on their questions. It is shameful that the Conservatives are missing tonight. Their leader's not here to answer the questions. They and the Cabinet are avoiding the scrutiny and decisions that they have made and not taking accountability for the financial mess that Hillingdon Council is in. And that is in the context tonight in which we answer many of our questions. This does reflect a pattern that we as Labour have seen over the years, a council that doesn't listen, a council that doesn't engage, and a council too often that ignores the voices of residents. And after nearly 30 years of Conservative-led council, residents do not feel better off. Under this current Conservative administration, we've seen rising council tax and fees, a new garden waste charge, £77 million in reserves completely depleted and cuts to the services that people rely on. I'll pass over to Councillor Punja.
Thank you. And we at Hillingdon Labour are determined to change that culture. We believe decision making should be done with communities, not to them. Residents should be at the heart of our future in this borough, and that is what our manifesto is all about. We offer a different path. Our pledges are clear. Scrap the garden waste collection charge, tackle antisocial behaviour, repair our roads and footpaths, act on fly tipping, and protect vital community assets and spaces. Alongside that, we'll regenerate our high streets and improve our centre provision, as well as deliver neighbourhood hubs. On May the 7th, there is a clear choice: more neglect and mismanagement with the Conservatives, or a fresh start with Hillingdon Labour and a responsible leadership. We are a strong team of local champions on your side, working for a safer, cleaner and fairer borough. Thank you.
Okay. Can I ask Reform to introduce themselves?
Yes, thank you, Graham. I hope you can hear me. Again, thank you very much for organising the hustings. We're very pleased to participate, and as with Labour, very disappointed that the Conservatives are not here to answer the questions that the residents would put to them. We all know that Hillingdon Council is financially broke and bankrupt. It has debts of over £594 million, and that's before taking into consideration the government's £150 million emergency bailout. We have a deficit in the dedicated schools grant of £75 million and no cash reserves. And we are all paying for that. We're paying over £600,000 per week in interest, which is dead money. It doesn't buy a library book, plant a street tree, or hire a teacher. We're also paying for the hated Tories' £77 garden waste stealth tax. And we will, when we come into office, scrap that straight away. And we also have the cold, callous decision to close the Rural Activities Garden Centre, a centre that is used by those with special care needs. But it does not need to be like this. And we are determined to repair the financial damage done to this borough by the present Tory administration. We will listen to and adhere to Ernst & Young, the council's external auditors, when they reported that Hillingdon Council does not have a financial reporting system that is fit for purpose. That needs to be a priority for a Reform UK Council to implement a financial system that works for all.
Okay.
We'll also set up a Department for Local Government Efficiency, which will weed out waste, inefficiency and bureaucracy.
You've gone way over your time.
Have I?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Thanks.
Cheers.
So can I ask the Liberal Democrats?
Thank you very much. Well, good evening, everybody, and I'll try not to repeat things that you've now already heard, but thank you all for being here. The country in general and our borough in particular face significant challenges. We've seen worsening wealth inequality, an NHS in crisis, failing transport systems, crumbling schools, crime, antisocial behaviour, and our progress towards net zero is too slow. And then despite record tax levels, national debt, 95% of our GDP, to make matters worse, as you've already heard, here in Hillingdon, our borough council has followed suit, racking up debt and only avoiding bankruptcy with a massive loan. So before we get into specific issues, I thought it might be helpful for you to understand what drives Liberal Democrat thinking and what distinguishes us from other parties. So I just very quickly want to go through three key axes. There's the left-right axis, which you'll be familiar with. We tend to lean to the left on social matters, but to the right when it comes to the economy, because we believe a strong functioning economy is what's needed to raise the money that pays for the social goods that people deserve. And then there's a national, international axis as well. So whilst we're really clear that we would have been far better off not leaving the EU, we also firmly believe that decisions should be taken where appropriate at the most local level possible. And then finally, there's an authoritarian versus liberal axis. We believe in small government. We believe people should be free to do what they want unless it harms others. So that is the background to a lot of our thinking that you'll hear later on when we're answering specific questions. I'd just like to thank you all for coming today and for engaging in our deeply flawed democratic process. Thank you.
Thank you. And the Green Party.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for inviting us. We, the Greens, we're the only party to unify everyone. We're for everybody. We listen to our members, and our representatives are normal people from different professions, not just career politicians. I've been a doctor since 2000. I was born in Hillingdon, and I just want to let you know that we are a mixture of intelligent people who understand how the mismanagement of the last so many years has affected normal people. When the Green Party is only funded by party members, we're not at the mercy of big businesses or corporation lobbyists. We're here for the 99% and not subservient to the 1%, i.e. the super rich or corporations who do not pay their fair share of taxes. We've lived under the 14 years of national Tory failure, 20 years of local Tory failure, and I won't talk about what's been happening with the disappointment of people being looked after by local and national politics. But Hillingdon has been betrayed by the duopoly of the Uniparty, i.e. Labour and Tory, in so many ways for so many years. Prolonged austerity, lack of vision, lack of transparency, lack of infrastructure such as EV charging points. They've sold off our council assets, and there's been a lot of villainising of people on benefits and migrants, and we need to come together as a community. Everyone is in this together. We need to work together to find the best way forward for our wonderful borough of Hillingdon, and we're very passionate, and we have many different ideas of how to lead us forward. And we've just had enough of the past so many years of failures on each side, and we need to open our eyes to what is important. Thank you
Very much. And believe it or not, we are actually still on time. So that's good progress. So the first question, and obviously I'll have to leave it up to each party to decide who's going to answer, or if you're going to both try and answer it. Remember, you have 1 minute to answer the question. So the first party to answer is actually the Greens. And the question is, what specific measures will you take to license, control and enforce standards on HMOs, houses of multiple occupancy, across the borough? So Greens.
Thank you very much. So when it comes to HMOs, we need to remember that ordinary people live in HMOs. We need to empower the renters to report mismanaging landlords that are not obeying the rules to the council, and make renters understand their rights with legal protection, and to have a very fair and easy way for the renters to be able to report these landlords, and very clear reporting channels. And we also need to support good landlords by providing clear information. And some homeowners are forced to return their homes into HMOs because they can't sell and they want to move out, and such as around the Heathrow area, and we'll come on to that later. But renters are forced to turn to HMOs because they cannot afford to rent by themselves, and it's due to lack of affordable house building, lack of housing in general. And we really need to take the current standards, and I'm really glad that we have the licensing that
Okay.
that is in place.
You're past your time.
Oh, so sorry.
Sorry, can I ask people to keep an eye on the clock and try and stay within the time, because otherwise we won't be able to get through all the questions. Thank you. So, Labour, who wants to take this one?
I'll take it. Thank you, Graham. So I want to first start with the problem of the increased HMOs in our borough. It's because we haven't built enough houses, and private landlords have taken the opportunity to profit out of this particular crisis and take advantage of the situation. As a councillor, I see this across my ward all the time in Newsley, which is blighted with HMOs. It was myself and Labour that brought the motion around licensing to the Chamber in July 2024, asking for this council to implement a licensing scheme, which the council agreed to do. Now, it has taken the Conservative administration 18 months to do that. 18 months while residents in our borough have had increased HMOs, with businesses buying homes in residential streets. They don't live here, they just basically rent them out, and their council tax doesn't increase. They pay the same amount of council tax, but they produce vast quantities more of rubbish, of using more utilities and using more of the infrastructure. One of the things that needs to be done is enforcement of licensing, because licensing on its own is just not enough. You need to have an enforcement team that go out there and make sure that those licenses are adhered to. More than that, is it enough? Is it high enough? I don't think it is, and we at Labour do not think that is. We also need a housing charter that actually works for the residents of this borough, so that we want to have good quality housing for all, even those who live in HMOs.
Well, again, you've gone way past the time. Please keep an eye on the clock. I'm being lenient to start with, but eventually I'm going to have to start muting people as we go past the time. So please try and bring your, if you can fit, if when you get to the end of the clock you can finish the sentence, that would be great. Okay, thank you. So then reform, HMOs.
Yeah, good evening, Graham. Gerard Barry here, so I'll take this question if I may. Thank you very much. So I'm a surveyor by profession, and I chair the Resident Association in Harefield and have done for the last 2 years. HMOs are a huge issue, a huge issue. They are, as I describe them, a scourge to our village. They cause enormous anxiety amongst our elderly who have to sit alongside these properties which are unlicensed. What we need to do is get a handle on the list. The first thing we need to address is, where's the data? We're told there are anything up to 2,200 HMOs in Hillingdon alone. We see that growing exponentially year on year. We notice that the licensing is not up to scratch. We're not resourcing it appropriately. This could be a self-sufficient department. I would argue that it could earn as much as the parking fines that we're currently being levied with, nearly £6 million a year. If we charged a suitable license fee of over £2,000 per HMO and then some, times 2,200, that gets you to over £6 million. That gets you around the 6 mil mark, which we could then easily resource. So I see I've run out of time on that one, so apologies.
Thank you. And finally, Liberal Democrats.
Hi. Look, preface this by saying no one should live in squalor. Okay, there is just no reason that anyone should find themselves in poverty. So what does it take? Probably proactive inspection, probably an annual report of what that inspection begets in terms of findings. But, you know, we've already sort of alluded to this. This is a consequence of scarcity in the housing supply. Okay, there are no simple solutions, no nice little tie it up in a bow. This is about building. You give rogue landlords power by strangling the housing supply, and you give people less options for affordable housing. This is straightforward, but it doesn't mean the solutions. And so we represent the challenge ahead when it comes to tackling what is a pretty dreadful, mostly moral issue, if we think that people should live in a way that is human.
Thank you. So the next question is on waste and cleanliness. And the first person to answer it will be Reform. So the question is, how will you maintain reliable weekly waste collections and effectively tackle fly tipping and street cleanliness throughout the borough?
Yeah, thank you. That's me again. So there are three things here. It's the smart use of operations, it's discipline, and it's using data, using it correctly. What we've seen is, again, an under-resourcing of that key staff role. What we need to do there is to look in detail at the use of agency staff across the borough. I think there's enormous savings to be made in that. And I think we need to modernise the waste collection system as well and recycle appropriately. We only have one waste unit in the borough, which is currently based in Harefield. So we've got household waste and recycling centres need to be increased. We need to educate against littering and fly tipping, and we need to enforce There's two apps that we're currently using at the moment, which is Fix My Street and Love Clean Streets. And the response time from the borough is pretty abysmal. And then we've discovered that their environmental enforcement officers, have been cut from 10 to 6. So again, we're not adequately resourcing this problem. And again, I'm out of time, so apologies.
Thank you. And then we have the Greens.
Oh, that will be me.
Okay.
For some of our residents, waste collection is weekly in name only, I'm sorry to say, with frequent missed collections, particularly it would appear in more deprived parts of the borough. Reporting missed collections is arduous. Better information and easier reporting would likely reduce minor fly tipping. A significant amount of fly tipping is actually residents placing waste next to or in bins at bus stops due to uncollected waste collections at their own home. This is obviously unacceptable, but it's an indictment of the current service. Operating a bagless service has many challenges. And in many areas, unfortunately, is contributing to street litter, including where I live, with residents reporting increases in the amount of litter on collection days. And while foxes are often blamed, there are multiple causes. Better tenant and landlord information and more frequent emptying of street bins in hotspot areas would certainly help. The council, I think, should take a more proactive, user-centred approach that engages residents in improving the waste collection services and identifying problem areas. We should remove the garden waste charge and bulky waste collection to encourage responsible behaviour. And where there is organised criminal fly tipping, I think we do need to look at stronger enforcement. But personally, I wouldn't like to see us penalising everyday minor actions such as pouring coffee down a drain, as was reported in Richmond.
Thank you. Liberal Democrats.
Thank you. So I'll address the garden waste charge later because I think that's coming up as a separate question. But one of the things that I've always abhorred is littering. I joined the Harefield Tidy team last year, and that's made me even more aware of just how bad it is. So one of the things I would like to do is encourage a relaunch of local litter pickers because it is strangely therapeutic. But without wishing to repeat what's been said already, it's crucial that we have a much more firm response to fly tipping. Where we find who has done the fly tipping, and we had a case of that just recently near me, let's make sure there are prosecutions and fines. And finally, with regards to recycling, let us perhaps take a leaf out of our neighbours in Three Rivers. That's the area that does Rickmansworth and bits of Northwood. They send nearly twice as much of their waste to recycling as we do. They're very often the top council in the area, and they happen to be Liberal Democrats, so I'm sure they'd share their expertise.
Thank you. And finally, Labour.
Thank you, Graham. Firstly, I do want to echo and praise Hillingdon litter pickers and other groups that have taken up this task. We can see it's simple. The waste collection is mismanaged. We have committed as Labour repeatedly and raised this in council repeatedly. We want to see free weekly waste collections, and that includes scrapping the Garston waste charge. We really need clean streets. We need streets that we can be proud of and that the community can come around, rather than what we're getting back from council officers at the moment, which is they won't research or investigate into piles of rubbish. Councillor Punja went out as recently as Saturday to have to go and identify rubbish that had been fly tipped on the corner. The administration really hasn't got a grip. And we have been asking for the bulk waste collection skips, which have arrived, but they need to be maintained and carried forward. We need to be looking to increase street cleaners. As it's been said, they have been completely slashed in half over recent years. We would implement 3 enforcement hubs with rapid cleanup. We're looking for quick action that gets the problem resolved soon, rather than residents losing heart and losing pride of their areas.
Thank you. So the next question's on council finances and budget, so this will be fun. And the first party to answer it will be the Liberal Democrats. How do you plan to balance the council's budget and manage its debt? And what trade-offs will you make?
Well, I'll answer that by saying that, we've already established that the Conservatives left a financial ruin in their coming and hopefully going. But where has the money gone? All right. Homelessness is up 100%, okay, in the last 365 days. Look, against poverty first, right? That should be the basis of financial decisions made by a local council, all right? Because you can see it as maybe my reform colleague might, the sort of doge, but actually supported members of our community are productive members of our community, right? We seem to have forgotten this idea in investment in human capital. Okay, you give people a chance and they become flourishing members of our wonderful community. And where would I save money? Well, cutbacks on the vanity, no sort of fancy do's that I know the Tories are slightly notorious for having, and also the no glossy Hillingdon People magazine. I don't need this sort of lovely propaganda through my door. So we're going to make sensible decisions, but it's an audit. It's about an audit. Thanks.
Labour?
Thank you. Well, first of all, we'd recognise the problem, not bury our heads in the sand, as the Tories have been doing for the past 4 years. We have continuously raised this in council. We have called for various actions to be taken. We sit on the audit committee, the select committees where we scrutinise financial decisions, and all the time they do not listen. They do not take it on board and they do not want to do anything. Also, we need to be transparent with our financial data. We need to have a culture change, which has been reported in all 3 of the last Section 25 reports. And we need to invest into prevention, because this response into problems escalating into crisis is so costly. And we see this all over the place. Send is a prime example of real costly expenditure. Social care, which is where our largest proportion of our budget goes. And what that does is it means that our services like cleaning up our streets and fixing our roads just get left behind and become worse and worse and worse. And I think that data and actually a good financial system as a system that works, and our Oracle system does not work right now.
Thank you very much. And finally, Greens.
Thank you. So we need to have some transparency here. We would need to do a full audit of all council assets and publish what we find, and let the people of Hillingdon know what their money is being spent on. The truth needs to be exposed before any realistic plans can be made. Local governments have been consistently underfunded by austerity from the Tories and Labour, and the Greens will lobby central government to restore council funding to full levels. We would stop selling off council assets for short gains. We need to increase revenues and cut costs by reducing dependency, for example, on agency staff, which was 1.6 million per month between September 2024 and February 2025 alone. Long-term solutions have so far been ignored. We need to think about wealth tax, rent controls, national care service, land value tax. There's many other solutions. We need to renegotiate bad deals with big corporations, stem the tide of profits extraction, and start to put power and resources back into the community. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So the next question is on
Graham, you forgot reform to answer that question, I think.
Oh, I apologise. Reform. Yes, you can answer it.
Oh,
But
thank you very much.
I hope you got an answer. We really
how
need
do we?
had 2 numbers.
No. How do we plan to balance the council's budget? Well, I alluded it to at the very beginning. First of all, we've got a financial system that doesn't work in Hillingdon, and we need to make sure that it does work, and that the right financial information is flowing from the council officers to the councillors so they can make informed decisions. And when they make informed decisions, they can realise that certain things that they're doing are actually costing more money than actually the income coming in. For example, the garden waste stealth tax, which is now administratively a lost leader for the local authority. And there is a little joke that someone once said to me, how are you going to do it? And the answer was, we can run a council like our mums used to run our homes, where our mum used to have our money and she used to put little tiny bits and pieces into each little pot. And there was a one at the end of it, which was rainy day. But she run her household fiscally and managed it properly. And that's what we've got to get back to. We've got to get a financial system that works.
Thank you. Apologies for that.
That's all right.
Okay. Enforcement. So this is Labour first, and the question is, how will you strengthen council enforcement against illegal housing conversions, rogue landlords, and antisocial behaviour to ensure the rules are actually followed?
Thank you, Graham. Enforcement one is the key actions that needs to be taken from this council. Conservatives have buried their head in the sand. They've effectively fallen asleep at the wheel and not used the powers that they have. We fought extremely hard, as mentioned previously, to get the Section 4 article around HMOs and things across the borough. And yet enforcement lacks. And when enforcement lacks, there's no incentive, encouragement, but also no example of how to make sure that rogue landlords, antisocial behaviour and other things are challenged. We've seen the scrapping of the out-of-hours service effectively, and we're going to bring in a housing charter that will bring real clarity. We're going to use the powers that the council have with fines and other incentives, as well as education. And through the 3 enforcement hubs that we're really going to bring across the borough, this is where the focus is there and where the accountability is really there, rather than things being lost inside the civic centre and decisions or communications with the council being so difficult. There's an opportunity there for people to engage and to see action happen on a daily basis.
Thank you. Reform.
Thank you. So again, enforcement, it needs to be visible, it needs to be consistent, and it needs to be hard to evade. All easily employable tactics if you resource correctly. We can revoke licenses and we can increase licenses. I like you to think back 10, 20, 30 years. How has it improved in the borough? It hasn't. It quite simply hasn't. So it's broken. It's broken on the ground. And instead, we have 24 directors in the London Borough of Hillingdon, who are paid over £100,000 each, and some an increasingly high amount, far more than the Prime Minister is paid. That's a misbalance of resources, quite simply. We talk about HMOs. They are a main part of the problem. We need to license it properly and punitively. We need to have civil penalties up to £30,000. These are all allowable under the rules that are already in place. We used to have a noise patrol in the borough. Again, that got cut. Our CCTV system has been cut. It's now only operating 5 days a week, 9 to 5. Thank you.
Thank you. Greens.
That's me. Well, forgive me for the creative response here, but the council has a range of enforcement duties, some of which are only partially carried out and others are not enforced at all. And one example that I would like to draw attention to is biodiversity duty. In March 2026, part of a local nature reserve in Hillingdon that included protected habitat and species was cleared to extend a private golf course driving range. This is a clear case where enforcement action should have been taken, with any fines reinvested into services supporting biodiversity, such as through membership of Green Space Information for Greater London. On antisocial behaviour linked to housing, we would improve coordination between housing teams, antisocial behaviour services and the police, ensuring persistent issues like noise or drug-related activity are addressed more effectively. And we would also like to make reporting easier and provide clearer feedback so that residents can see that concerns are acted on and followed through.
Thank you. And finally, Liberal Democrats.
So again, these are symptoms of a bigger problem, which some of you have alluded to, which is to do with housing supply and a failure to build. You know, we've empowered rogue landlords by failing to create a fairer and more abundant housing supply. But more than that, we've encouraged antisocial behaviour by failing to provide the basics, right? Which is more community enrichment, more, you know, it's always a bit trite, but the youth club thing is true. There are just less spaces for people to socialise and be together. And that does promote antisocial behaviour. That is, to me, common sense. Now, look, I think the only way out of this is, and we have to avoid penalising good landlords, which you've already said, but really the only way out of this is to get stuck in with making more spaces for young people, more spaces for people to live. It's about building.
Thank you. So the next question is on community safety, and Reform will be the first ones to answer it. How will you strengthen council? Oh, sorry. What practical steps will you take using the council's powers to reduce antisocial behaviour and improve the feeling of safety in our public spaces and town centres?
We need to start looking back and working closely with the police force, our voluntary organisations, and the wider community. The number of antisocial practices now that go on, bike riding, off-street riding, needs to be addressed. Littering and fly tipping. We've got to build community together so that we can tackle it. Now, the local authority is the prime mover in this, and we should be working with every single organisation out there to make sure that we've got eyes, ears on the ground. We should also improve the control centre at the Civic Centre, staff it 24/7, and have mobile CCTV around so that any antisocial behaviour is attacked very quickly, and working closely with police, we can stop it quickly.
Thank you. Greens.
There are now more than 600 members of Hillingdon Green Party, and many have said they joined due to concerns about rising hate crime and the tone of national political debate, including comments such as Keir Starmer's warning that Britain could risk becoming an island of strangers if immigration is not reduced. Our members have also experienced abuse while peacefully demonstrating in support of Palestinian rights outside the Civic Centre in Uxbridge. For me personally, as a gay man, I've become more fearful, and I've been deeply dismayed by Labour's approach to trans rights, including delays to Gender Recognition Act reform, which was a manifesto commitment, and their failure to ban conversion therapy, which even Theresa May supported. For many of our members, this is deeply personal. Everyone should feel safe in Hillingdon. We would build stronger partnerships between the council, police, community organisations and residents to address antisocial behaviour, hate crime, violence against women and girls and vehicle crime. We take a public health approach to antisocial behaviour, investing in crisis support, drug treatment and outreach, and strengthening youth services. And we would continue to oppose racism and division in all its forms. And I will just add, on flags and community tensions, we would improve reporting mechanisms and ensure the council uses its existing powers consistently where displays breach highways or planning rules and create intimidation. And I note that some councils, such as Oxfordshire, have taken a more proactive approach.
Thank you. Labour.
Thank you. Safety and feeling safe is at the heart of all that we want to do. And when we speak to residents on the door day after day, that is their greatest concern. And it's going back to basics for me, working with the police at neighbourhood level. This council has decimated over years its community safety team. We've seen the out of hours, as we said, services cut and closed. We have seen screens for CCTV effectively be unmonitored because there's so few people to do it. And there does need to be some technological as well as some staffing solutions to that. We want to see improved lighting in our local plan, which needs completely rewriting. We want to see high street regeneration so that shops don't remain unused spaces, stronger local intelligence, visible action in every corner for our enforcement hubs. Ultimately, we want to bring communities together. We will lead with hope, not division or hatred, and we will take down flags that have been weaponised against people.
Thank you. And Liberal Democrats.
So I'd first like to just say I really agree actually with the sentiment of my Green colleague and indeed with my Labour colleague. People deserve safety. It's quite simple. Doesn't matter who you are, you should feel safe. And for some people, that looks like seeing more bobbies on the beat. That visibility does soothe people, but I would be hesitant to just call for more police without sort of having some interesting conversations, and I'm sure they would be interesting, about why it is the Met have been so slow to reform and listen to what it is people think a really great police service should provide. Now, that is a GLA issue, but that doesn't mean we can't champion it. The other thing, again, I would echo what my Labour colleague said, which is that the flag thing needs just a conversation. These are conversations you need to have, okay? If people feel threatened by something we don't think is threatening, it is worth acknowledging why it is.
Thank you. Okay. Next question is on the RAGC, and it's going to be Liberal Democrats to start with. And the question is, what is your plan for the future of the Rural Activities Garden Centre?
Okay, that will be me. Thank you. So, sorry, it's a sound murphy. Yeah. So for those of you that are not familiar with it, for over 40 years now, it's provided a venue that builds skills and confidence for people with autism and learning difficulties. A previous council leader, who was a Conservative, said this was our jewel in the crown. However, the council's financial pressures then encouraged them to look at a line in a spreadsheet and see that it was unprofitable. And this ignored the fact that it was much more than a retail service. So I would like to get hold of the detailed numbers, which I found a little bit difficult, but make a stronger argument that the money spent on RAGC can save expenditure elsewhere because it has been so successful in what it's achieved. And from the beginning of April, it came under adult health and social care. So that now might be an easier path to success in securing its future.
Thank you. Labour.
Thank you, Graham. Well, as many people know, I have championed the RAGC and have campaigned very strongly for the RAGC alongside my Labour colleagues and Labour parliamentarians. The closure of the RAGC really angered me. I was there at the first meeting where all equalities and impact assessment was totally disbanded. We would, with Hillingdon Labour, reopen the RAGC. The report was flawed, the data was flawed, and the financial statements were flawed. It is a shop and a centre that not only enabled people with autism and learning difficulties to engage with the community, but it was more than that. It basically went out into the wider community for our elderly, for those who are grieving, for the loss. And it was a space where people could come together and an opportunity for residents to buy locally as well. A judicial review was needed to get an ACV, which I supported the FRAGC on. And really, we are working now with third sector health providers to be able to find an alternative solution so that we can open that as soon as we get into power.
Thank you. Greens? Who's going to answer it for Green?
So the Rural Activities Garden Centre, as has already been said, was a place over the last 40 years for the entire community. It was a very much loved and brilliant place where many people would go buy locally grown plants and flowers, sit down, enjoy each other's company. For many years in the borough, people with disabilities have been let down. Day centres have closed, specialised clubs have disappeared. Families have far too little support for far too long. And the fact that they closed this down, which was supporting people with learning disabilities and autism, was a complete travesty. And Hillingdon Council spends a lot of money in buying flowering plants from targeted approved contractors. We could use the plants that produce from here so that for the Civic Centre, for example, to be able to use the revenue produced and reduce costs long term. And it's a wonderful place and we need to reopen it. Thank you.
Thank you. Reform.
Yeah, thank you very much. I was actually around at the time the Rural Activities Garden Centre opened over 40 years ago. So I've had connections with it for many, many years. We will start talking with the Friends of the Rural Activity Garden Centre from day one, look at their plans and see them through. We will also open the retail side of the Rural Activities Garden Centre, which the Conservatives closed, which actually created the deficit. So that's the first point. The second point, and my colleague from the Greens brought this up, Hillingdon Council spends more money on plants for the Civic Centre than anywhere else. And where do they source them? They should be sourcing them from the venues like the Royal Activities Garden Centre. And that money then from the council goes back into supporting a actual practical activity. And I know the centre very well from a charity that I deal with, which is Community Connects. So work with them and rebuild.
Thank you. Next question, which will be answered first by Labour. How will the council use its planning and legal resources to mitigate the environmental impact of Heathrow expansion on the borough's residents?
Thank you, Graham. Well, our position hasn't changed. We want a better, not a bigger Heathrow. And I'm a resident of Heathrow Villages, and I have seen over the last 20 plus years the plight and the blight that residents have experienced by the Conservatives not investing in the area, but actually abandoning the Heathrow surrounding areas. And for me, that's a real problem, a problem that we've seen consistently across their policies. They really haven't engaged with one of our biggest employers. They haven't engaged to work to make sure we can secure investment for Hillingdon, which is much needed, not just in the Heathrow Villages area, but much wider. This is an employer that can contribute so much if the council are willing to get round the table and talk. But we also need to see greater monitoring of noise, greater monitoring of air quality, and it needs to be backed up with enforcement. Our local plan needs a redrafting. It needs to reflect the needs of residents, environmental protections, and build communities, including amenities. And we would ensure that we would continuously be at the table representing residents with Heathrow to make sure that residents are not left behind.
Thank you. Reform.
I'm having problems at the moment. Something's gone wrong with my system. Can you hear me?
Yes.
We can hear you and we can see you.
You can see me. I can't see you. Something's gone on my system. Okay, so I'm having a bit of trouble here. But I'll answer this one. Heathrow expansion. All the national parties are fully in favour of the expansion of Heathrow Airport. Rachel Reeves is presently pushing because she needs growth in the economy. Now, what we believe quite clearly is that this is going to happen, and that when they do push it through in September, October, and they resubmit a planning application, we as a local authority should scrutinise that thoroughly and make sure that all the residents of this borough are understanding of what it will mean and how it will mean. And at the same time, what we've got to do is make sure that this decision is not taken out of Hillingdon's control and moved over to the Ministry of Transport. Because if it does happen, then no safeguards will be made for the residents of Hillingdon. So it's up to us to make sure that when the application comes on, it's scrutinised properly and we work for the residents of this borough. I'm sorry, I can't see the clock, so I might have to go out and come back in again.
All right. Thank you, Andrew. Greens.
Well, firstly, I take issue with the word mitigate here. We should be opposing Heathrow expansion and a third runway outright and not treating it as a fait accompli. While some Labour members oppose expansion, the Labour government has effectively greenlit this damaging and costly project. And the MP for Uxbridge, Danny Beales, has offered conditional support based on 4 tests, including compatibility with UK climate targets. But this scheme is fundamentally incompatible with those targets. The idea that this can align with climate commitments is for the birds. These tests also ignore the impacts on nearby villages facing demolition or severe disruption and the destruction of parts of the Colne Valley Park. And we should not forget that Boris Johnson had the opportunity to stop this and he did not. The impacts are not insignificant. Homes will be lost, communities will be disrupted, and increased noise and air pollution affecting health and well-being across the borough, as well as property values. And I will just mention too that members recently attended a meeting and where the Hillingdon Mind charity recently presented data to a local meeting that said 69% of their referrals for Hillingdon were from Heathrow Villages, which is frankly startling. A third runway will increase congestion around the M25 and beyond, and airlines have warned that costs will be passed on to passengers. Please, I would urge voters opposed to airport expansion to back the Green Party at this election. Due to Conservative and Labour's handling of the national economy, it seems like we might have a short reprieve, but we must elect more Green representatives nationally to put this to bed.
Liberal Democrats.
Thank you. I'll take this one. So, first thing to say is that the council are not going to have a lot of power on this, I don't think. So we need to be careful about how we position this. On balance, we are very much against the third runway in the Liberal Democrats. But because this is deemed to be a nationally significant infrastructure project, the authorisation for it will bypass local planning. Now, we do recognise that the government has an agenda to drive growth, but that's outweighed by the demolition of 750 homes for the businesses in Harmondsworth and Longford. An increase in flights, the increase in passengers will bring with it much more noise and air pollution in an area that is already suffering. Part of my problem with this is that Heathrow's ownership, 98% of it is foreign. They won't care about the impact on local residents. So it's up to us to work hard on that. And I think that the best way forward for us on that is to work with our neighbours who are also against it. So that's Wandsworth, Richmond, Hammersmith and Fulham, Windsor and Maidenhead, and maybe one or two others.
Thank you. Next question, which is for Reform to start with, is how will you prioritise the repair of the borough's potholes and manage the impact of increased parking pressure on residential streets?
Thank you very much.
No, Andrew, that's me.
Oh, is it you? Sorry, Gerard.
If you don't mind, thank you very much.
Yeah.
Well, roads and potholes, very emotive, and an enormously important point that we need to raise. I spoke earlier on about two apps, one which the local authority don't use. The first one is Fix My Street. Three Rivers use it and they repair their roads in a timely manner. And people get frustrated when they get ignored. The reporting mechanism on Hillingdon's website is also not fit for purpose. What we would do is fix the worst ones first and fix it properly. You may know the JCB director created a new machine, which we understand the local authority have purchased, but nobody has seen it, where it fixes the road properly, not just comes along, throw some hot tarmac into a hole, tamp it down and move on. The cheapest pothole is the one that never forms. So we've got to repair the roads properly and justly. Talking about parking, we've probably got enough restrictions in the borough at the moment. I don't think we need to over-restrict at all. We've already got CCTV, and we already have CPZs, LTNs, and APCOA, APCOA, nearly levy fines already of about £6 million a year. So we'd like to have a closer look at that.
Thank you. Greens.
Thank you. So roads and potholes are a good example of how not investing at the right time costs a fortune to the council taxpayers. In the past, Tory Council in Hillingdon has cut the budget on road maintenance, increased the insurance premiums to pay for claims against the council made by motorists with damaged vehicles. If elected, we will survey the borough's roads and prioritise the most dangerous streets for urgent works and develop an annual work schedule for maintenance. We'll look also to improve active travel, encouraging people to use public transport, walk and cycle more to reduce our reliance on cars. And as a doctor, I want to say it is much healthier for us to be walking and cycling as well. We need to remind listeners that potholes can be even more serious for cyclists than those with prams, and potholes can be on pavements and pathways as well as roads, and so all the public are at risk of being injured greatly from poorly maintained pavements and roads. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Liberal Democrats.
Oh yeah, I think, all would-be politicians have sort of highfalutin ideas of what they should be doing, right? And actually, this job, when you go door knocking, well, they tell you what they want to talk about, and it is potholes. Okay, so that is, in our view, something that you have to respect. All right, it's not boring. It is important to the everyday mobility for our residents. Okay, so listening is a thing that doesn't come naturally to politicians, and I think it is listening to where people are having the problems and addressing it extremely quickly because, listen, people pay council tax. I'm going to talk a bit more about council tax, but that should allow for residents to identify what they feel are the things that most impact their lives, whether they're sort of exciting or not. And so, I sort of would also echo what everyone else has said. And
Thank you. Labour.
Thank you. So potholes are a bane of my life and probably most Labour councillors, because most of the potholes are in Labour represented wards. And the council already has assessments and road surveys done. What the council does not do is be transparent in its publishing of those road surveys and the findings, so that they have a clear list and a priority needs list, rather than a I'm going to do it in the wards where their favouritism is. So the government have given this council £1.1 million to fix the potholes. We don't know where that money has gone. We don't know what they are doing, but there's an election around the corner and you can see which roads are being fixed. So I would say that actually what we would do as Labour is make sure that this is about need and what has been, and look at those reports and make sure that they are facilitated on the basis of what has and hasn't been done over the last periods, because there are roads that have not been fixed for 20 years. Parking issues, well, that really needs to be looked at, and we would address that accordingly.
Thank you. Right. We have only a few minutes before our break, but the next question I think has mainly been answered by most of you. So could I ask you to do a really quick answer on this question on waste collections and charges? The first answer is going to come from the Liberal Democrats, and it's, will you maintain weekly bin collections, and what is your position on garden waste charges?
Okay,
if we could do that quickly, I'd be grateful.
All right. So, so the answer to the first question is yes, we do like weekly collections. We are not very happy at all about what's happening with green waste collections. We've already seen the cost go up from £70 to £77. The current system seems to be efficient, doesn't seem to be meeting residents' needs. One of the things that we would like to see is perhaps some kind of token system whereby you don't have to buy for an all year round provision. If you have just during the summer a small need to have your rubbish collected, then maybe do that. I fear, though, that the costs of implementing such a system will be higher than they should be. And so, therefore, we just have to go back to where we were before, which seemed to work very well, and let the local council have its funding from other areas, because that one's so important.
Thank you. Reform. You're muted. Andrew, you're muted.
That was because of Gerard interrupted last time. Very simple. We will maintain the weekly bin collections. We will also scrap the hated garden waste tax. It's a tax that actually penalises those people who have small gardens and only have one bag, which is put out probably once a month after their grass cutting. So it's a punitive tax. And if anyone has been up to the Harefield Recycling Centre and seen the chaos up there when people are putting their garden waste out because they refuse to pay this tax, then you understand that it's actually something that is costing more than is being or has income coming into the council. Scrap it immediately from day one.
Thank you. The Greens.
So on the first question, yes, judging by the amount of waste that we're producing in my area, I don't think it would be sensible to reduce the frequency of waste collection. I think it would be counterproductive. We do need to be mindful that we can't keep increasing the amount of domestic and trade general waste that ends up either being incinerated, which of course produces particle matter in the air, or buried, making land unusable. We do need to look better at what is working well, and we need to share better information with the public. And in the longer term, we do need to reduce the amount of plastic and forever chemical waste. On the garden waste charge, we are in favour of getting rid of it. I can't help wondering whether it actually makes any money. I know that a lot of people that were using the service have not subscribed to it, and I wonder how the income compares to the cost even of running the service. And I do think it's a bit disingenuous of Conservatives to keep bragging about how low our council tax is when they've introduced a couple of stealth increases like the garden waste charge and, of course, the car parking permits within such a short space of time.
Thank you. Labour.
Thank you, Graham. Yes, we're very clear. It's in our manifesto. We will maintain free weekly bin collections, scrapping the garden waste charge. With proactive action on fly tipping, with getting rid of the garden waste charge, we will be able to save back the money that was rushly decided to get from this extra taxation. The cost of waste sorting services and things, the efficiencies that can be made just to relieve residents' pockets, as well as increase recycling rates and stop fly tipping, is so much needed that the garden waste charge has really been another unsuccessful attempt by the Conservatives to try and hide their financial mess.
Thank you very much. And with that, we are finished part one. So we're now going to take a 5-minute comfort break. Right. Welcome back, everyone, and welcome to part two. So we have a list of questions in the Q&A section. And I better refresh my list so that I make sure I've got the most voted ones. So the first question, which will be answered by the Greens to start with, is where do you draw the line between legitimate debate on immigration and a rhetoric that fuels division or hostility towards certain groups? In West Drayton, we've already seen situations where hard-working, tax-paying migrants have been advised to avoid certain areas during last summer weekends. Do you accept that political messaging can contribute to that, and what will you do to prevent it? That's from Sarko Ahmed. So, Greens.
Do you want to take that, Matt?
Yes, I'm happy to take this. Well, I think it's really important that as a Green Party, we need to show everyone that it's the community, the country has flourished through immigration. I am a child, I was born in this country. I'm a child of immigrants who came over. The NHS has survived because of immigration. Immigrants bring a lot more to communities and to the infrastructure and improving a country than what they take from it. And people come to this country to contribute to it. Majority of immigrants are here to actually enhance and improve the community, and we need to, as the council, we need to allow there to be an opportunity for people to meet each other. It's when people don't get to know each other's communities and understanding, that's where issues arise. And the world is much more enriched through integration. And that's definitely what our message is.
Thank you. Labour.
Thank you, Graham. So I do think there is a legitimate debate on immigration, but that debate does not have to involve any kind of rhetoric that fuels division and hostility. As a Labour councillor in Useley, I have faced racism on the streets. I have faced racism during this period, and I don't think that is acceptable for any member of our community. As like Nav, I was born in this country, I was educated in this country, I have worked in this country and paid my taxes in this country and have contributed significantly. What I think is really one of the things that's happened to me is that when I've asked the council about their rhetoric that they put out on council media, which is fueled with discriminatory and inflammatory language, blaming immigrants for things that they cannot even be accountable for, I am called a racist by the leader of the council, and I said that in the chamber as well. And this is unacceptable behaviour from our leadership, and we need to take accountability, because people with positions of power have positions of responsibility.
Thank you. Reform.
Gerard, I take this. Okay. There is a big difference between immigration, which has helped this country and helped this economy, and people who pay their taxes, and illegal migration into this country through the boats. we've got to sort of look at it logically, that anyone who wants to contribute to this country is welcome, and we welcome them all with open arms. What we differ here is that we do not accept that anyone who comes to this country illegally should have the benefit system given to them, housed, given a mobile phone, and be better off than almost anyone else. So, in our view, obviously, that we would like to tackle illegal migration into this country, and we've made it quite clear that we will be deporting a number of those once we come to power in government.
Thank you. And Liberal Democrats.
Look, care and the caring society, that's probably my umbrella belief. All right. I think all the time people underestimate our commonalities, meaning everybody. You know, the Lib Dem strength is doing what they don't. And what I mean by that is if there's anger on both sides of the political spectrum, then we don't do that. Okay. Look, various parties at the moment want to divide us, but it is just a fact that we are better as a whole than in our separate parts. And I think more than that, you risk basically creating barriers that will never come down by pursuing the line of thought that my Reform colleague was just sort of hinting at, this idea of mass deportation. That is not a pathway to discourse that can heal a very broken Britain and Hillingdon, let's face it.
Thank you. The next question, which will be answered by Reform to start with, is what is one decision your party would make in the first 100 days that would clearly show residents that change is happening in Hillingdon?
I think the answer to that is to scrap the garden waste del tax. And the way we would do that is we would cut the salaries of councillors by 10% and the generous special responsibility allowances by 20%, because that shows that we're all in this together. The financial crisis and going from one bumbling crisis to another, burying your head in the sands, is not acceptable. So that would be our first task, to instruct officers to scrap that. There are also another quite a lot of things we can do. We will set up the Department of Local Government Efficiency, which will look out to weed out waste, inefficiency, and bureaucracy, the red tape that we have of parcel, paper to paper across the civic centre. We will also open up the the reception once again. Yeah, okay. Thanks very much.
Thank you. Greens.
I'm going to answer this one for us. I'm going to say let's take the flags down. I'm aware that lots of us really enjoy looking at them. I'm personally very patriotic as well, but they are intimidating to people. They're also starting to look a bit tatty, quite frankly, and they have been mounted in inappropriate locations in a lot of cases. So I think within the first 100 days, if we were elected and have control of the council, that's something I'd like to see. And I think we also need to audit the council's assets as well. If squeeze in a second. Thank you.
Thank you. Liberal Democrats.
Actually, you're not going to get too much from me on this one, just because I just agree. I think, you know, I alluded to it earlier, but I sort of soft-soaped it, but I don't feel soft-soap about it, so I'm going to walk it back a bit, okay? Yeah, the flags are aggressive, all right? There is always a sort of reasonable way to show a bit of patriotic spirit. And then there is every lamppost for a 2-mile radius. And then you leave London and you go through parts of the country that probably are sort of white majority, okay, and you don't see them. So my question is, why do we see them in multicultural areas, if indeed the defense is that they're not an aggressive act? As I say, sorry if I slightly flew off the handle on that one. I had to sort of make it clear that I don't take a soft soap approach to that particular point.
Thank you. Labour.
So I think in the first 100 days, we won't be able to do anything of what's been indicated if we don't sort out the finances first. And that's full transparency with publishing the CIFRA report and ensuring that some decisions where assets are on disposal lists, where bin services aren't being properly organised, so that you've got the street cleaners becoming before the dust trucks, and then we effectively have the rubbish that remains on the street for a week, where the flags that are tatty are on the weaponised, stay on the lampposts. All of this relates to our finances. So a Labour council will, a control council will start with the finances first. Stop things being disposed that have real community value and start to show residents quickly what action can be taken when you know what you need to spend and how it can be spent properly.
Thank you. So the next question, which is for the Liberal Democrats to answer first, is what specific actions will you take to protect green spaces and improve environmental issues like EV charging and cycling provision?
Yeah, I'll take that one. So, yeah, cycling is an important one for me as a keen cyclist. And what we've seen in our research is very low uptake in Hillingdon. Now, partly people are not getting around on their bikes because there is poor provision for cyclists. So you then get into this circularity. And we could make that easier. Cycle lanes are only one element of that. Cycling hangers can help, particularly in areas where people just don't have the space for their bike. Our neighbours in Ealing and Lib Dem councils further away are doing a good job on that. And then in terms of EV charging, which was part of the question, that I would give quite a high priority. Consider that road transport is, depending on how you do the arithmetic, 30 to 50% of air pollution, 90% of all carbon monoxide emissions. So switching to EVs and making that easier can help solve that particular problem. But then when you solve one problem, you create others. Providing EV charging in car parks, that's the low-hanging fruit already happening and increasingly in play. Harder is the use of lampposts, and there's these things called pavement channels or gullies. They can work as well.
Thank you. Labour.
Thank you. Well, unlike this Conservative administration, what Labour would not do is be removing covenants on to build homes, as they did with Useley Recreation Ground. We would not be building on metropolitan land, as they have been scaremongering residents that we will be. We will be ensuring that our parks are well maintained and not handed over to management companies like golf courses who do not have the experience or the equipment to be able to deal with our country parks like Stockley Park. We will be making sure that there are proper management plans of Rice Woods Natural Nature Reserve, and we will seek to improve our biodiversity in our borough, which isn't just done by mowing the lawn, but by proper park management. In terms of EV, as an owner of an electric vehicle, I can tell you how important it is to have a wide range and a broad infrastructure of EV charging in our borough, which other boroughs seem to have done far ahead of us. So yes, that will be needed. And the cycling provision, well, we have been so late to the table on making sure that cyclists have safe routes in our borough. And there is an implementation plan that has not been implemented by the current administration, which needs to be reviewed and implemented.
Thank you. Greens. Who's going to take this?
That's me. Thank you so much. So obviously, as the Green Party, we've always been interested in protecting green spaces because robust research show that it's paramount to improve our mental and physical health and well-being to be in and amongst greenery. And cycling is an excellent form of exercise. We don't have, as everyone's mentioned so far, we don't have enough cycling safe routes in the Borough of Hillingdon, unlike other parts of London. And a connected cycle network makes cycling safe everywhere. It's a fun activity for people to do, from children cycling to school, family cycling to the park, or people going on their local shop or commuting. And Transport for London has already done analysis of the routes in Hillingdon that have most potential to switch people's journeys to cycling, and has the funding available to bid for in order to build on this. EV charging is something that's paramount. People in flats do not get access to EV charging, and we need to reverse this. And we also have to talk about how the water quality has worsened. There's so many other factors to talk about. I could be here all evening, and I won't take up too much of your time, but you know the Greens will look after green spaces and the environment and health and well-being for us all. Thank you.
Thank you. Reform. Who wants to take this?
I'll take this. First and foremost, Hillingdon Reform will protect, preserve and defend the green belt and the metropolitan open space. There is scaremongering from the Conservatives that we're not going to do that, but that's typical electioneering. So the reality is that we will be looking after all of our green spaces. I'm not proposing to build them. And may I remind all the viewers that it is only the Conservatives that have ever built on metropolitan open space in Hillingdon. They did it when they built the Ruislip High School, because that was green land. So they've got nothing to attack the other parties on when they've done it themselves. EV, we need to have more EV charging slots around. And we will encourage that when we get into power.
Thank you. Right, so the next question, which will be answered by the Greens first, is what will you do to protect and restore local community assets like Cowley Meeting Hall and Theo's Cafe?
Oh, almost lost the mute button there. Apologies. The situation with Theo's Cafe highlights conspicuous dealings with council-owned buildings under the current Conservative administration. There should be a full audit of council property and land, including who holds leases and for what purpose, carried out neighbourhood by neighbourhood. I think this could also identify sites that are being underused. Perhaps there are plots of land that could be turned into community gardens, for example. I think that's really important, given how many of us, are desperate for more access to nature and taking into account rising food prices. In the case of Theo's Cafe, an individual has invested £75,000 of their own money into improving the council building that is now a valued community asset, and the council should ensure it receives the rent directly and that arrangements are transparent and properly managed. More generally, we support community assets being run for the community, and leases should be awarded through open tender and prioritise public value. We could also make use of greater use of assets of community value status, as in the case of the Rural Activity Garden Centre site, to give community groups a fair chance to purchase assets when they come up for sale, and we would support them in doing so as councillors.
Thank you. Labour.
So, since being a councillor, I've campaigned to save a number of community assets, including the Beck Theatre, the Rural Activities Garden Centre, and now Cowley Meeting Hall, along with my Labour colleagues. It is really important that we protect these community assets. The problem with Cowley Meeting Hall is about the peppercorn rent that was granted to a former Tory councillor. And then I was at the Cabinet meeting on December the 23rd, where the Cabinet decided to write off the debts of that former Tory councillor. If that isn't cronyism and could be called corruption, then I don't know what is. So Hillingdon Labour have asked for full reports from the council. They have failed to give them. They keep giving the excuse that it's GDPR and legal issues are going on. Hillingdon Labour have reported this now to the police because we do not feel that this has been taken seriously enough by the council. We will ensure that we empower communities. I've done that. We have done that with the asset of community value on the RAGC. We will continue to do that on other community assets. We will strengthen the voluntary sector leasing, because this really needs to be strengthened so that our communities have access to the funding that they needed, rather than having to pay for furious amounts of rent on property that could be otherwise used.
Thank you. Reform.
First and foremost, I think we need to have total transparency over the issues of Theo's cafe and Cowley meeting hall. What we need to do is find out exactly the timeline of what happened, why a sitting Conservative councillor at the time was given a lease when the charity that he was running was then defunct, why a senior councillor then tried to have the lease extended and the lease changed, and then why that councillor again tried to write off debts while Theo's Cafe was still paying the now ex-Conservative councillor the rent. So full transparency for a start, openness, and that's why we're calling for a full independent investigation to look after assets and then have them used by people in the future.
Thank you. Liberal Democrats.
That is you, Jonathan.
Oh.
If you
Sorry, hang on, we've got a problem here. Can you take that, Max?
Okay, what talking about? I mean, actually, I'd rather not. It doesn't seem appropriate to give an answer, that I haven't prepared properly.
Okay.
Can you?
I didn't prepare that one either. Sorry.
Oh, okay. Well, do you want to
Sorry.
answer off the?
Jonathan, would you like to answer off the cuff? I mean, my feeling is we should only talk, in a way that is plays to, what we understand about.
Yeah, I'm not across the detail of it to give a sensible answer.
Okay, thank you. And let me just dismiss this one. And so the next question, which will be answered by Labour first, is what specific plans do you have to improve youth employment opportunities and address antisocial behaviour involving young people?
Thank you, Graham. I mean, youth and community work is my bread and butter. It's been my career for many years before I started to work with local charities. And for me, it's very much around aspirations with young people and opportunities with young people. When I first became a councillor nearly 8 years ago, we had £4 million that was spent on the youth service. It's now in low hundreds of thousands. We have a youth bus that has been in design for pretty much a year and a half, which should be out and about in the community, providing positive alternatives to young people, helping them to go from not an employment education and training into meaningful careers and education, helping them to find apprenticeships and be matched up with opportunities that really suit their abilities, as they have so much to offer. I think for me, this is about multi-agency working. It's about getting young people part of the community through intergenerational work, through looking at ways in which with younger people or young offenders, there can be restorative justice, where they're contributing back to society in a meaningful way that builds them into the future, rather than necessarily being imprisoned so that they can't contribute at all. So young people need to be part of the community, and Labour would very much make them part of that by creating new spaces and places.
Thank you. Liberal Democrats.
Good. Okay, I actually have something really serious to say about this, which is, I'm going to speak from the heart. Okay, I am a comprehensive school teacher. There is nothing more important to me than young people's future, because actually, if it's not the most important thing on everyone's agenda, well, you're not prioritizing the future of Hillingdon, you're not prioritizing the future of Britain, you're not prioritizing the future of this world. Okay, so look, there are no easy solutions to what is a sort of mass disillusionment that young people are feeling. We know the not in employment, education or training statistics are way too high. Okay, but the thing is, actually at the Hillingdon level, what you really have to look at is the children in care, who are way more likely to end up in prison. And you also just need to look at the quality of schools. Listen, talking as someone who works within the comprehensive school system, it's not good enough. And it's not just a DFE issue, it's a teacher issue. It is looking at ways in which we can inspire young people to make a slightly broken country, borough, better for the next generation. Could not be more important.
Thank you. Reform. Who wants to take this?
Right, yeah, thank you. That'll be me. I spent 9 years volunteering as a Met police officer in Hillingdon and Harrow, and I spent another 7 years as the assistant boxing coach at Harrow and Wealdstone. So I know a little bit about discipline and know a little bit about children and young people running wild with parental control nowhere to be seen. And I've also been into a couple of care homes, and it's utterly tragic. So I will echo Max's sentiments in that regards. What are we going to do? Well, first thing, yes, the youth provision is not there. The not in education or training group of 16 to 24-year-olds in this country, the number of unemployed and with nothing to do is rising rapidly. We're heading for, it's a time bomb. It's a time bomb. Let's not put too fine a point on it. There are something like 600,000 to 700,000 children, young people at this moment in time with nothing to do. We need apprenticeships, most certainly. We need direction. We need youth clubs. We need boxing clubs. We need all of these things. And occasionally they just come from the volunteer section. And sometimes the government just has to get out of the way. Simple as that.
Thank you. Greens.
So young people need to feel welcomed and safe in our communities. We must support our children and young people, give them opportunities to grow and thrive. We will involve young people in the development of programmes and facilities, including increasing the number of youth centres, which will meet their needs and which they feel are their own. And most important, we need to use the existing council facilities and buildings to reopen community projects and different kinds of exercise or youth clubs, and we will work hard to send support for children and young people. We'll also support parents and trustees that want to bring academy schools back under local authority control, and we will defend small schools that are threatened with closure. We also need to support local businesses to form relationships so that businesses on the high streets so that they can offer job opportunities, and also work with businesses so that they can be apprenticeships. And we also have Peter Ryson. Some listeners might know him. He served as councillor in Hillingdon for 18 years, including 4 years as chair of the Education Committee, and he would be amazing to be elected so he can scrutinise the work of the council on these important issues. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next question, which can be answered by the Liberal Democrats first, is building homes across the borough is not being matched by an equal increase in services required for an increase in population, such as GPs, dentists, etc. What will you do to address this? Liberal Democrats.
Well, that's a great question. I think, I've sort of harped on about this, but I think the amenity aspect of what you provide comes later. Look, we know that developers sit on planning permissions. That contributes to a structural slowdown in housing growth. Look, we have to lobby government, and I think I would hope my colleagues on the left would feel this. In Hillingdon, Right to Buy has really strangled the housing supply, and we need to lobby the government to suspend that. All right. We also need to implement sort of robust use it or lose it powers, that if land banking is taking place, they have to feel the pressure of that. But none of this, nor, by the way, and I'm sorry to my Green colleagues, the misguided economics of rent control actually builds. Okay, and we do just need to build new, probably municipal, probably council housing. And I think the amenity aspect, GPs, all the rest of it, that sort of comes later. People are on the streets. People are living in HMOs. This is not good enough.
Okay, thank you. Labour.
I think that was quite a simplistic answer, really, and not really tackling the issues. The question was about how do we increase the services to match the building. In Hillingdon, we have not built homes. It's been 0, 0, 0 for the last 3 years. So that's one issue that needs to be dealt with. But where we have built homes, what we haven't done is actually use the SIL money that is given the Community Infrastructure Levy to be able to invest into the infrastructure. The St Andrews development, which is half finished, that everybody can see in the eyesore of Uxbridge, was the developers gave £600,000 to the council to spend on a health centre. Where has that money gone? We have no idea. Probably gone back to the developers, because so much of money that comes out in SIL is not spent by councils. We need to make sure that all that money that is spent by councils, that actually we do provide infrastructure, especially when you come to the south of the borough, where you have got lack of health provision in GPs, in dentists. Heathrow Villages has none whatsoever, and they all have to go to Haystown or to Useley to come into having medical provision. So I think that we do have to address the community infrastructure, but we do that with basically local plans and making sure that the local plans work, and we are effectively using the SIL money for that is given to us with developments.
Thank you. Reform?
I think I'll take this. When I grew up in the East End of London, developers included infrastructure when building homes. So you had your GP surgery, you had your shops, a different variety of shops. Today, all we see is development of mainly flats, the St Andrews development, for example, and no infrastructure there at all for the community. We see doctor surgeries now overloaded. So the reality is that we should have been building that at the same time. The other side to St Andrews is that I seriously believe that was the biggest mistake we made. It should have been the site for a new central hospital in Hillingdon, and then move the Hillingdon Hospital onto that site, which would have been better for transport links and for accessibility. Big mistakes are made, and we should make sure that they're never made in the future.
Thank you. And Greens?
Thank you very much. I'll take this. It's absolutely outrageous that an area's infrastructure is not reinforced before new builds are made, or the increase in people living in an area. It puts extra pressure on doctors, dentists. As a GP, I know the extra pressures that my colleagues and everyone faces on a day-to-day basis. This is one of the main reasons why everyone's decreased their satisfaction with the NHS, and people are feeling like they're not getting good value, and this is why people are scapegoating immigrants for everything. It's because of lack of investment, lack of infrastructure, and we need to go and we need to get funding from central government, because this is something that really urgently needs to be addressed, and the local community is suffering as a result, and it's not fair. Thank you.
Thank you. The next question will be answered first by the Greens, and it is no secret that Hillingdon has debt. Savings need to be made. What services do you think can be cut? Greens.
I can take this now. Firstly, just to say that we have one representative on the council at present, so we have, and that's for a few months, so we have fairly limited insight into what's going on the council, but we obviously we're very concerned about the council's expenditure, and I would just draw attention to what we talked about earlier, really, with regard to the amount of money that's being spent on agency staff. I mean, that seems like a particularly sort of egregious sum that I think we need to look at.
Thank you. Reform.
I think the answer to that is relatively simple. Where areas that we can save money, I've alluded it to before. The generous pay packets of councillors. I think there's a need to cut those by a minimum 10%, and the special responsibility allowances. We don't believe that any councillor should be paid £75,000 to £80,000 per year. A second area of saving, which doesn't impact on public services, is Hillingdon People. It's produced 6 and sometimes 7 times when they put a special one out. we can cut that and save about £1.2 million. And then look at the civic centre itself and make some savings there. It's 2/3 empty, and it's being lit and heated. We need to look at that, make savings inside the civic centre first, rather than going out and hitting the general public.
Thank you. Labour.
So some of the answers that have been given today are not really full insight into the council finances or understanding the council budget at all. So I will like to take it to a different direction. What we have is our services have been cut to skeletal. So actually cutting more and cutting more and cutting more is not the way to go forward. What we need to look at is invest into our community so that we can have preventative services that stop the spiraling costs there. We are in debt. We need to control the debt. We've got auditors coming in that are going to look at our financial and governance systems that are really, really important. We need to think about the consultants that we use, the agency workers that we use, especially in social care. We need to think about where that money is going and why we're paying higher prices than other boroughs for certain amenities for our social care provision, or whether it's our agency staff provision. Why we can't recruit people and why we're having to rely on those is really, really important. And I just would like to say that ultimately efficiency is going to be the way forward, not cuts to services.
Thank you. And Liberal Democrats.
Yeah, no, certainly my Labour colleague is right that it is going to be mostly about efficiency. And actually, I'd echo, things I actually alluded to earlier about generous pay packets. I agree with the Hillingdon people stuff. But also there's this point about the artificial lowering or keeping council tax lower than it ought to have been. Now, that is not what people want to hear, but that is the reality, okay, is that the Conservatives have won on a platform of promising low council tax, but our public services are being hollowed out, all right, as Liberals, and it's quite straightforward that nobody is free without public services, right? Without the things that keep you alive and well and a member of the community. That is not anyone's definition of freedom. The other point is why it is that you're able, if you're a Conservative MP, to blame send provision when that's a national issue and we are in way worse financial conditions than basically everyone else who's been dealing with the same problem.
Okay, thank you. And the next question, which will be answered by Labour first, is what do you feel are the top 3 priorities that need to be tackled first, and how would you do this if you are elected? Your top 3 things that you need to fix first.
Well, we are standing very clearly in our manifesto on making the borough safer, making it cleaner, and making it fairer. So safer for us, we've already mentioned in previous questions, safety is absolutely fundamental with good lighting and good relationships with the police. The cleaner is very much about getting our bin service sorted out, the fly tipping sorted, but not just that, the weeds and other things that affect the pavements and roads. And then in terms of fairer, we have a real opportunity here to bring our communities together and to work on getting rid of things like the garden waste charge that puts money back in people's pockets, but also looks at a way in which we can build sort out health inequalities by having health hubs supported by the government, but all across Hillingdon, not delayed as we're seeing the current administration doing. Fairness for me is about residents feeling part of something with a council that listens, that's transparent, and that they can actually get hold of when they pick up the phone or go online.
Thank you. Reform.
I think it's quite easy. The first thing is absolutely definitely making sure the finances are correct, having the right systems in place so that we know if we make a decision, that decision is financially viable. We know from the garden waste stealth tax that the Tories put in that they're actually losing money now because of increased fly tipping, the number of people who didn't uptake it, the number of people who are working together as 3 or 4 families paying for garden waste. So having the finances right, stabilising the finances and not going from one crisis to another. The second, of course, is resident safety. taking knives off the streets, working with the police, working with voluntary groups, and working with the community to make sure that everyone feels safe. And I do agree with my Labour colleague, street lighting. Why did we have all these dim lights when you've got women walking down the street who fear for their safety? So we need to do and address that.
Thank you. Greens. You're muted.
Sorry, looking for the control. I mean, I would say to this question, and this is something that I take from my professional experience, really, is that the very first priority should be to consult with residents on what those 3 priorities should be. It's very easy for me to say what I think the 3 priorities should be. Personally, I live in one of the areas that's blighted by litter. And I also happen to know lots of people that feel particularly unsafe in our borough and that feel threatened by rising xenophobia and hatred. I know there are other people that feel very, very passionately and rightly so about the deteriorating condition of our environment, the fact that we have water courses that are no longer in public use for drinking water. But most importantly of all, we need to ask residents what they want us to prioritise. If elected, that's what we will focus on doing.
Thank you. Liberal Democrats.
Yeah, so I used this term earlier, but it really is about care and the caring society, right? And the 2 most simple points of that is that there's an environmental aspect. No planet certainly means no Hillingdon. There's a young people aspect, which is no young people, no sort of medium term future. These are not normal times. Okay, I think we sort of talk about things as if it's business as usual. I think I've sort of heard that from my Labour colleagues. Actually, the balancing of a budget needs to be genuinely forward-thinking, and in sort of rebuff of what some others have said, actually, austerity or Doge is no longer good enough. It is about pursuing genuinely innovative solutions moving forward, and doing that with transparency, because too much of what has gone on has been about expensive temporary solutions. All right, it's been about sort of quickly build expensive private housing, because there's not enough proper solutions. And the last thing I'll say is we have to look at the high street not just as sort of the casual definitions of rejuvenation. I'm so sorry, but we do have to look at why every high street is Costa, Ladbrokes, McDonald's, Ladbrokes, and so on, right? That these are profound problems.
Thank you. Right, next question, which will be answered by Reform first, is what are your views on the proliferation of data centres and how will you safeguard Hillingdon's energy and water supplies from their demands? So Reform.
Gerard, I think, on this one.
Yeah, thank you very much. So what are data centres and how many do we have already in the borough? What purpose do they serve? So I'm a surveyor. I deal with industrial property quite a lot. I think that the growth and expansion of data centres is something that we need to be very much aware of because our infrastructure, our grid, simply isn't compatible. It can't support it. So what do they use? They use an enormous amount of power, as you can imagine. They want to be sited as close as possible to its customer base. It could be sited further away, but then there's a fragility between the internet connections and what have you. And they use water to cool their towers. There are currently 8+ in the borough, with probably another 3 to 4 in planning. 3 have already been planned, and they start work in the next couple of weeks, in the next couple of months. I think we have enough, actually. Hemel Hempstead has already said they doesn't have the power supply any longer, so they've shut down any new data centres coming into the town, which is a good move. Unless they're adding something to the environment, to my mind, they don't add enough in terms of employment. They don't add enough in terms of business rates payment. So the numbers are stacked against them in Hillingdon.
Thank you. Liberal Democrats.
So this is a really important one, okay? Because without appropriate government action, people will be left behind, okay? These huge multinational corporations, they need to be the target for Liberals. Okay, this idea that government is the great central power is not been true for some time. Okay, and data centers are just one manifestation of the way in which our lives are basically dominated by these people. So, look, as my Reform colleague said, in Hayes, for example, there's negligible job creation. Okay, there are correlative data patterns to show that there's an increase in energy bills when these things are built. And it's anti-green. It's actually anti-green, right? There's no way for any foreseeable future these things will be powered by anything other than, distinctly ungreen resources. And so it's a mess. The whole thing's a mess.
Thank you. Labour.
Thank you, Graham. I think we have to be honest. We all use AI, the cloud, phones, and businesses do the same. Data needs have increased. There is a need there. And that's why there is a need for data centres. And we are placed strategically in London, I suppose, along some major lines. And I do hear the concern around the need for energy. And that's why there needs to be proper strategic planning. And it's worrying that we don't have a local plan that addresses this. The Conservatives haven't put one forward that really addresses this. There are opportunities with sustainable energy, using heat generation to lock in energy from networks to heat homes and power bills. But Hillingdon hasn't got any of the benefits from these because of no strategic approach from the things that are coming through. There's no engagement with the sector. The council has a real role to play here with other authorities and agencies, but we have to prioritise residents. We can work with the mayor, the government, we can advocate for long-term infrastructure with our Labour MPs and Assembly members, but it really boils down to having a strategic plan, and Hillingdon Conservatives have failed to even put one together.
Thank you. Greens.
I'll take this one. Thank you. As Greens, we're cautious about the proliferation of data centres. They're highly energy intensive, and I think probably a lot of people don't realise they're very water intensive as well. The growth of data centres reflects a wider reliance on tech and AI as drivers for economic growth, sometimes prioritising this economic growth over social outcomes. Our former leader, Natalie Bennett, Green member of the House of Lords, has said, that AI, which is behind a lot of this data centre use, reflects the data that it is trained on, and it can reproduce existing social biases around race, gender, and class while presenting them as objective. We do need to be cautious about the increasing use of AI, for example, in facial recognition systems used in policing, which have shown higher error rates in research for darker skinned women than for lighter skinned men, which raises concerns about their use in stop and search contexts. I also have concerns about the grid capacity in West London. I was reading that there are constraints on housing development, so I'm wondering how we can square data centre growth when that is the case. Data centres should really only be permitted where they're demonstrably sustainable, such as when they're using renewable energy and where they don't undermine our housing or essential services. And this should be enforced through the planning system. But I would also say, as politicians, it's really important that we use the platform that we have to educate the public about AI. If a meme,
I know you're passionate about this, but you're going way over your time.
Apologies. I'm very tired. I'll stop there. Thank you.
Okay. So the next question, which will be answered by the Lib Dems.
We've finished our questions. It's the closing speeches.
Oh, closing speeches. Sorry.
2 minutes each for that.
Okay. So Liberal Democrats go first then, because they're the next ones.
Look, so tonight we confront the reality of our current situation. Across Hillingdon, the old political certainties will no longer hold. For too long, the public have been presented with a veneer of progress while the foundations of our community have been hollowed out, whether that's in our hospitals or schools. As Liberals, we know that true individual freedom is impossible without public services. You do not have freedom if you're trapped on an endless waiting list, or if your local services are managed by an old-fashioned, fragmented system that fails to treat our community as one whole. The current way is inefficient, and administration lacks a coherent plan for our future. The economic challenges we face are not normal. They are the result of a sustained failure to invest in our people, a reluctance to hold our institutions to account. We reject the approaches of the past, those that have left our finances depleted. We also reject those who offer divisive, simplistic answers to complex socioeconomic problems, like some of us here tonight. We need a principled approach that moves beyond political performance and breathes new life into tired foundations. We must, in Hillingdon, act with honesty about the world as it is. Let us deliver a future for Hillingdon built on integrity and shared responsibility. And by the way, none of this is easy. So I hope everybody here is ready to let the hard work begin.
Thank you. Greens.
Thank you very much, everyone, for your time. Right now, there are 30 Conservative councillors, 16 Labour, but just one Green. For many residents, including me, this election represents the first time in our lifetimes where voting Green can elect a Green councillor. And I would say to residents, are you happy with the way things are, or as they have been? Or do you want some change? We're optimistic, we're not complacent. The number of Green Party councillors across London will grow massively after the elections on May the 7th. As a diverse local party of volunteers and activists reflective on the diverse borough that we live in, we want to bring hope to the people of Hillingdon through a different kind of politics, more listening, more collaboration, and a stronger focus on prevention and long-term thinking. Andy and I are ordinary people. We're not professional politicians, but if elected, we will work hard for the area, as will all of our fellow councillor candidates for the area we represent. We'll put residents and our environment first and stick up for those who need our support. I joined the Green Party because I could see that they were the only party that were actually caring about everybody, and they're willing to speak up for all of us, not just what is politically expedient. And I've met some wonderful people from all different ethnicities, races, religions, all kinds of backgrounds, and we represent the 99%, and we are not going to be subservient to the 1%, and we're not going to just follow lobbyists and the rich corporate people that have been holding this country really to ransom and not paying their taxes. Thank you very much, everyone, for your time.
Please vote Green on May the 7th.
Thank you. Labour.
Thank you. This election is about one simple question. Do we accept more of the same with the Conservatives, or do we choose change? Under this Conservative administration, there is less safety, less support, fewer services. Residents are being asked to pay more and more, and our streets aren't as clean, our services are stretched, and the council finances have been pushed to the brink. But it doesn't have to be this way. On May the 7th, you have a real choice. You can choose continued neglect with the Conservative, with administration that doesn't listen to residents, doesn't show up tonight, and buries its head in the sand, operating as if everything is fine, whilst depleting £77 million of reserves. Or you can choose division and chaos with reform, where promises have been made to voters have been broken in the very few councils they have taken control of, where they've increased the garden waste charge in Northants. And I would hope today, that reform will remove support for their candidate in Ickenham, who promotes violence and hatred.
Thank you.
Tittle, you're on mute. Sorry, Tittle.
Oh, Tittle, did you want to?
Yes, please. Sorry. Labour has been instrumental in exposing the Conservative financial mismanagement, both in the council chamber, select committees and through the press. Labour has spent over a year asking residents what their priorities are, and our manifesto is led by residents of this borough. The Labour government has already provided 47% increase in funding to local government alone, and further grants are available because this Labour government is committed to local government. This with extensive experience in council and a strong local action team. We have a plan to stabilise our finances, rebuild our vital services and restore pride in our communities. Our plan is for safer streets, cleaner neighbourhoods and a fairer future for everyone. This is about your street, your family and your future. So if you believe Hillingdon deserves better, if you believe we can build a borough we're proud to call home, then we ask for your vote on May the 7th. Together we can deliver change our community deserves. Vote Labour.
Thank you very much. Sorry, reform.
Well, thank you very much for hosting the hustings tonight. It's been a pleasure debating with colleagues from the other parties. So thank you to them as well for all the comments and contributions this evening. In reality, everything that we do comes back to money. and the finances of the council. And while we have a broken and bankrupt administration running this council, there's going to be no change. They bury their head in the sand and watch the waves wash over them. We need to change that. We need to attack the inefficiency, waste, and bureaucracy of this council. We need to tackle the debt because that's crippling. We pay £600,000 per week in interest, and that is unsustainable. It doesn't buy anything. So by fixing the finances of this borough, that has to be a priority. And from there, we can then invest. And that is what we're going to do. We're going to sit back. We're going to improve the information system. And we're going to attack the waste inefficiency of this borough. We will not be the Conservatives and bury our head in the sand. We will confront it head on. On Thursday, May the 7th, this borough has an opportunity for real change, a credible alternative to the status quo. Thursday, May the 7th, I urge everyone to vote reform.
Thank you. And thank you all panelists for coming this evening and for your answers to the questions. And thank you to the audience for your participation and for giving us the questions to ask them. So that's it for tonight. This is our first ever hustings or electronic hustings. And I hope you found it useful. Thank you and good night.
Well done, HARA.
Bye.
Well done.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Good night, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye.
Take care.
Thank you for coming.